I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, he is arguably the most important figure in the history of humankind. Who am I talking about? You've already guessed.
Yes.
Jesus Christ.
Yes.
And he is the subject of a book called Jesus, the Odyssey of an Ordinary Man. It is written by Theckadath Mathew, and we are delighted to have Theckadath, also known as Tim, on our show today. Tim, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Very good.
Great to see you. Tell me a little bit about what inspired you to write this work of historical fiction.
Very good. I am born in a family of Catholics. Mm-hmm. So I knew about Jesus Christ from the very early days onwards. I was an altar boy. But over a period of time, I got poor treatment from some of the priests. So I decided not to go to the church. And but the figure of Jesus and some of his learnings stuck in my mind. So I was very busy with my college days, but I wanted to read about Jesus because what I read about him and knew about him has nothing to do with what the priests are saying in the church. Jesus is mostly known among the believers as somebody who walked on the water, raised the dead, and he himself rose from death, etc. But when you take a closer look at the life of Jesus, it is a totally different person I see. After the time of Jesus, that is 2020 years ago, there were some major philosophers on earth. Except Muhammad, all came and went. Akhenaten from Egypt, Cicero, Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, Buddha, and Cicero. And Jesus stands apart from them because the subject he taught, let me say, number one, he talked about the atrocities against women. He talked about the bad doings of the Pharisees. He talked about the pedophiles. He talked about the working class. He talked about untouchability. So none of these said philosophers talked anything about it because I took 15 years to read all major theological and profound books before the time of Jesus. So what I saw in Jesus, number one, what he did against the women. Women were treated very, very poorly from time immemorial. For example, the violence against women starts in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, a woman do not have any right to the wealth of her father. Her voice or statement in a court have only 1/3 of the value of a man. He is even subjected to gang raping by her father. There is a man called Noah. He is a noble man. Some 2 guests came to the town. He took the strangers into his house. The people around him, who are the sodomites, demanded that the men should be taken out of the house. Noah came forward and said, "Don't hurt my guest, but I have 2 daughters. They are virgins, and I will give 2 daughters to you, and you can do whatever you want with them." That means the father is helping these hooligans to mass rape his children. Can you see me?
I can. Unbelievable.
I can't see my picture, but I don't know what is it. So you can see me now.
I can see you. You're still on the air. Yep.
Okay. The second thing is, when a woman is married and man have a sex with her, somehow he feels that the woman is not right. He can immediately send her out, and that woman has to prove her innocence. There should be a token of virginity on the bed. That is a drop of blood. If it is not there, he is defiled. He will be taken to the temple. There they give a horrendous test called jealousy test. And if she fails the test, she will be taken to her father's village and she will be stoned to death by her surrounding neighbors. Actually, in some other religions, such activities are even done. Then, in Hinduism, the woman is considered to be a shadow, man's shadow. When the man goes, there is no need for a shadow, or there will not be any shadow. Therefore, it is better that she will jump into the pyre of her husband's funeral. Likewise, there are so many atrocities against women. Jesus is the first ever man came forward against it. In the very early days of his work in Nazareth, there was a crowd and of men with stones in their hands, and there was a woman crouched in tattered clothes. Somebody came and told Jesus that there is a stoning going to happen. You please come. Jesus came to that spot. He entered the circle, took the harlot by the wrist, turned around and challenged the men, who amongst you without sin may cast the first stone. That is the first time ever a philosopher talking in favor of the rescue of a woman. Likewise, there are many other things. Once he said about pedophiles, he said it's much better that a man who is a pedophile, a stone tied around his neck and him being sent to the bottom of the earth. Imagine that. A philosopher recommending capital punishment for pedophiles. And then he was deadly against untouchability. For example, he always said his messages through parables. He said a parable of the Samaritan. The Samaritan is second-class citizen in Israel. They have got defiled blood. So a priest came, he didn't touch or see the man wounded. A rich man came, so many people came. At the end, there was this untouchable man, the Samaritan, who took the sick man, took to an inn and gave support and financial support to him. Likewise, women in the lower class, again, untouchable. A Jew will not touch a Samaritan woman. But once Jesus was thirsty, he saw a woman drawing water from the well. He went to her and got water. I can go again and again and again, but I am going to stop the examples now. My question is, how did Jesus know all these things? Where did this wisdom come? The Christians think that it is a divine intervention. He is peace of God, Son of God, or sometimes they say he is God himself. But that's not probable. Just like Aristotle said, God do not have the time to come this earth and micromanage the man. So he learned all this. The first time we see Jesus in the Bible is in the Temple of Jerusalem, where he is involved with a dialogue with the Pharisees. He was evicted. At the time, he had very good knowledge about the Bible, which is the Old Testament. He also knew Greek because after the Alexandria's invasion of Palestine, the Hellenization was all done very well over the last 100 years. People knew Greek very well, and some of them are also familiar with the Greek tragedies and writings of Plato, Republic, and all. Jesus decided to go and see the world. He went to Egypt. That's the first place where everybody goes, because Egypt is very rich and they are very benevolent. Jesus went there through a caravan. He got a job in the Library of Alexandria. The Library of Alexandria was at that time at its pinnacle. Alexander and his followers wanted to make a center where the whole knowledge of the universe is stored. And that is the Library of Alexandria. All the writings around the world, the Greek tragedies, the Indian epics, everything was there. So Jesus spent 4 years there and got a very good knowledge about the various writings of the world. Now, therefrom he went to Rome. He wanted to see Rome because the Romans were his rulers. And there he saw Cicero. Jesus always talked with parables. In the history of earth, the most brilliant rhetoric comes from Cicero. Cicero is the master of rhetoric. Jesus learned the technique from him and also read his writings. Then, of course, he went to a familiar field, which is Greece. There he went and walked through the markets. Then he came back to Israel for a short period of time. And there he got married to a girl called Mary and went to Babylon. Babylon was a big eye-opener for him. In one of the writings, 2,300 years before his time, it says a prayer. In Alexandria, a man is staying in front of the idols and saying, "Dear God, forgive my trespasses. I have angered the gods. I have angered the goddesses. I have trespassed. Forgive me." Actually, that is the nucleus of the prayer, "Our Father who art in heaven." In the Babylonian text, he also said many, many things. One of them, for the time constraint, is the word coming from your mouth cannot be taken back. So think before you make a speech. Jesus made the longest journey from Babylon to India. That route was very known to the rest of the world because 2,000 years before him, the Aryans came to India through the Khyber Pass. 530 BC, Cyrus came with an army and invaded India. 320, Alexander came. Then the Indo-Scythians came. Then the Indo-Parthians came. Then Megasthenes came. So that route from Palestine or the Mediterranean area to India is a very well-known route. There is nothing strange about it or special about it. Jesus, probably with the help of some travelers, came to India. Then the library of Theckedath was at its peak. Actually, it was the biggest learning center in the world, 700 BC until about 300 BC. There again, all the knowledge in the world, particularly the Indian texts and the Chinese texts, were available. So he learned from the Indian text something good and many things bad. In Indian text, it says, as I said before, a woman is what the shadow of a man. So sati, that is the procedure of pushing the woman into the pyre of the man's funeral. Then he came across a man called Confucius. Confucius was a very, very interesting learning subject for Jesus. So Confucius said, take the beam from your eyes before you take the mote from the other. Confucius said, a man is not honored in his village. So there are many things I can say. From India, he spent with a writer called Vyasa. There he came in close contact with Buddhism. In Buddhism, maybe that is the place where from he learned the message, show the other cheek. But also in Babylon, in the Babylonian text, there is the same thing. And you should love the man who hates you. So likewise, he, by the age of 30, became a fully learned man and came back to Israel. What did he do there? He did not do any miracles. Those are all created stories. He did not walk over the water. He did not raise a dead. But what he did was, I said before, for the women, for the exploited children, for the workers, the equal wages, and ridiculing the Pharisees. About Pharisees, he said, "Wow, you are vipers. You flaunt the street in flowing colors. You sit at the head seat of the marriage. You eat the best cut of meat. You drink the best wine. You are nothing but filth. We frequent the widow's house. You are whitewashed tombs, and it is better that you never existed." So when you read it again in this light, I saw a man which is not in the Bible. What I was trying to do was filling the unwritten pages of the Bible. When I wrote the unwritten pages of the Bible, I saw a man, Jesus, ordinary man with extraordinary intelligence. And that is a second look at Jesus. About Jesus, if you have any question, I'll be able to glad before we move into the next subject.
Amazing, amazing. The story of Jesus, as you fill in all the gaps, is quite extraordinary. And this took you many years of research, correct?
What I did was, it took about 15 years. I wanted to see those places where he probably have traveled. So I went to Palestine first, twice, and all the Palestinian scenes I saw. Then I took 2 trips to Egypt, all the way from Alexandria to the Nubian deserts I traveled. Then I went to Rome, maybe about 4 times. Then I went to Greece about 2 times. Then I went back to Babylon. That was a rough road. Babylon was under the Iraqi rule at that time. And particularly after the George Bush stupidity, no American passport holder will be admitted there. But I somehow went to the American embassy and the Israeli and the Iraqi embassies. I got permission to go there. So I saw the real places of the Euphrates, Tigris, the waterway around the city, and also the place where the hanging gardens were, the temple of Isaglia, and above all, there is a stela, about 5.5 feet high, weighing about 300 pounds, in which there are 296 laws written by Hammurabi, and that is to be seen by everybody in the city. All the nucleus about laws, lawsuits, medicine, ethics, philosophy, all of them are written there. I tell you something. For example, a doctor steals a cow. The expectation from the doctor is very high. So if he steals a cow, his hand will be cut. But on the contrary, a less educated man steals a cow, he will get 6 lashes. So the punishment is according to the expectation of the individual to the community. That is the reason why Babylonian laws are even practiced in our courts today. Babylonian astronomy, Babylonian medicine, Babylonian laws, a lot of things are practiced even today. If you have any questions, I will be answer about this, and we can move on.
What do you feel about the divinity of Jesus? Do you feel that history bears that out, that he was the Son of God?
I am very clearly stating in my book that divine things do not happen on earth. Socrates has said, Aristotle said before, gods do not have time to come to this earth and micromanage. I don't believe that anybody from heaven, I don't think there is a heaven to begin with. they will come to the earth and micromanage people. That's not the way it is done. So it is all false. He was a brilliant man. In my opinion, he was born out of wedlock, a bastard, for example, but he was striving for knowledge. He went to all these places, all these universities and studied. He was not divine. He was a brilliant man.
Now, why do you think he had such impact on the human race? I mean, our calendars are marked by his birth. For 2022 years now, we have looked to the birth of Jesus as a pivotal point in the world history.
Number one, during his time, he had already developed a big following of people, because what he said, was music to their ears, good wages for everybody, and you have got your own personality. Women have some voice, and by the side, somebody might have said that he did some miracles too. In those days, it was easy to fool people, but he was a great personality. People who have listened to his speeches never forgets him, because he made very, very philosophical statement with many examples. So he was a personality exemplar. But more than anything else, in his lifetime itself, there were 12 disciples and many other people spending his message. So by 100 AD, his messages reached all the way to Rome, that is surrounding the Mediterranean. Then his disciples, some of them, went to many different continents. One of the disciples called Thomas, Saint Thomas, he came to India and started Christianity there. And he was persecuted by the Brahmins, and he was killed by a spear in one place. His tomb is there. But what he said, nobody can object. It is all soothing to the ears and good to see. So if people had an attraction. Such a thing has never been heard before. Hinduism. Majority of the people in Hinduism do not want to be in Hinduism because they are untouchables. There are 4 classes: Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, and untouchables, 5 of them. So that last 3 of them have nothing to do with Hinduism. That is the reason why the Buddhism got a big kick. In the other places also, there is class war, etc. Jesus taught a society which is everybody is equal, everybody is supportive, and everybody is loving each other. And if there is a harvest, people will be given their part, not a small part and a big part, equally divided. That's the reason why one of his parables, he said, people who came to work at 7 in the morning, 10 in the morning, 11 in the morning, all got the same wages, because they were asked to come 10 o'clock. They came at 10 o'clock, they did their job. Some other people were asked to come at 7 o'clock. They came at 7 o'clock and they did their job. So in his opinion, in Jesus' opinion, equal wages to equal set of workers. These are unheard of things in his time. And not only that, for example, Palestine. In Palestine, those people were fed up. Everybody came there, fought with them, and conquered them. For example, there was a very brief encounter with Rome, with Egypt during Ramses' time. Then the Persians came, then the Alexander came, and they all subjugated them. They killed the pigs in the Jerusalem temple. They defiled it. But Jesus said, you pray. And when he saw some atrocities in the Jerusalem temple, he went in there with a crowd and he turned the table of the money changers and he behaved like a man. And that kind of a thought came from the Indian philosophy of um, uh, Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita tell you, you have to do what is right in your mind. So on one side, Jesus is a man ready enough to go and fight and turn the table. On the other side, he is ready to go and wash the feet of his disciples. So that range of a personality was in Jesus, which nobody has ever seen until his time or even after his time.
So he was very much a charismatic philosopher, it seems, in your opinion.
Yeah.
That he connected with people. He preached a philosophy that was appealing. It's a philosophy that has helped shape civilization, some of the ideals in the United States. This idea of giving yourself before others and turning the other cheek. So he has made considerable contributions to humankind, even if he is not God. And I guess that's a question that will only be answered definitively at the end of each of our times, correct?
My point is, Jesus was there for the last 2000 plus years. The things which I said, the definition that I gave to Jesus, nobody even thought of it. So step by step, I took his actions and said, this probably came from there, but he's a brilliant man. He did a lot of things by himself. For example, his behavior to women is not spoken anywhere before. So that is his original. And there are many other things like that. And I think if somebody is bold enough to make a movie out of it, that would be a masterpiece.
Yeah, absolutely. Quickly, let's turn to your other book that you've written. It's called Comfort Care, The Struggles of an Aging Cardiologist. And that deals with a doctor towards the end of his life who's dealing with issues of dementia. A very different book, but tell me about that one, sir.
I think this is a subject that has touched my heart very well. I have been a cardiologist for something like 45 years. So I have seen so many sufferings. People who are very brilliant, very powerful, and very influential towards the end of the life, they lose one after the other. They lose their control. They lose their dignity. They lose their independence. And sometimes they become subject to the help and mercy of the other people. And most people think about death. Most people are afraid about it. And people try to commit suicide. And then in some countries, there is euthanasia. But there is a better way. And that is comfort care. For example, you have a deal with your doctor, you make a bill, and you tell categorically that when my faculties are losing, when I am losing my control, I don't want to live anymore. Give me peace, give me morphine, let me go to some other place some other place where from I came, for example. So comfort care is an important thing practiced very, very, very little. And that is a curse of Western civilization too. Very briefly, I tell you about my grandmother. When she died, she was 89. She stayed with her son, and they took care of her. In those days, the British were ruling our country. We had a ration card for opium. So my grandmother will get a supply of opium every month. She take a mini teaspoonful and put it under the tongue before he sleeps. So he was at peace all the time. There is no suffering. And I was there beside her bed when she was dying. She was very comfortable, no pain, nothing. And she took probably an extra spoon of morphine. He died. The family took her to the church and buried her. So we need to have a lot more love and compassion towards the older people. You and I are all going to listen to this music when the time comes. So we need to take some early steps. And I made a lot of community speeches about it. And people who hear, they say, very good idea. Some of them do will about comfort care and end of life care. In this particular character, Dr. Jacob, he was a very brilliant guy, born in India. He was first class, first rank, and gold medalist, became a cardiologist, and he has done all the trainings that are available in the world, including India, England, and United States, and then practiced. And towards the end, children moved out, wife died, he cannot drive. When he take a reverse, sometimes his foot is on the accelerator and the car go and hit. So they took his driving privilege, and he was good for nothing towards the end. Can you imagine in your life, you have been you have been in a very, very important place. Everybody knew you, everybody respected you. And the same person after some time is unable, loss of control, loss of dignity, go to a nursing home. You are at the mercy of a nurse. Most nurses are very good. Some of them are not very good. We hear it about anything. I have personal experience that a doctor who was a senior colleague of mine went to the hospital with a stroke. I used to go and see him about 3 or 4 days. One day when I went, he is soaked in feces, and that feces started 3 or 4 days back. Nobody cleaned him. He was a doctor in the same hospital. So I went to the nursing station and told them. They did not recognize me because it is after my retirement. So a doctor who was in a hospital, who was the chief of medicine, known by everybody, treated many people, and toward the end of his life is floating in his own pieces. So it is not a fine thing. So what I'm trying to make through that book is a second thought about the end of life. It need not have to be like this. It needs to be any better. One thing more. Mm-hmm. We know that there are billions of dollars are spent towards the last 3 months of a human's life. All useless, in my opinion. Yeah. I think at the time you are doing the angioplasty or brain surgery, you should give them comfort care. You should give them food, water, and some morphine as needed, and let them go in peace. Yeah. Again, this is a subject which is in the mind of everybody. It is a very well written book, easy to read. Yeah. That also is a very good movie subject.
Absolutely. I actually worked on a movie called You Don't Know Jack with Al Pacino starring as Jack Kevorkian. And we explored the subject of euthanasia and terminating life when life is no longer really there. And I think it's an important conversation to have because people are able to live an extraordinary long life nowadays because of drugs, because of the statins, because of the high blood pressure medicines. So you have people living well into their 90s and they've outlived their bodies.
Yes.
I mean, so it's tragic sometimes to see people who can't see, can't hear, can't walk, can barely breathe on their own, can barely eat on their own, yet they're able to be kept alive.
Yes.
But what is life? What is the quality of that life?
Nothing.
Exactly. I agree with you 100% there, doctor, without a doubt. I've seen it too many times with old people. They just need to pass and go in peace. And, you know, when my mother was passing, my mother died at 85.
Yeah.
And she embraced it. She said, I've done everything I wanted to do. I'm ready.
Yeah.
You know, she almost looked like it was going to be the next, you know, she was a very faithful person and she believed it was going to be her next step, her next adventure. And she left very, very peacefully, thank goodness.
Yes. Yeah. But about Kevorkian, he was a little bold and unnecessarily arrogant. What he said, in principle, it is good. In contrast, I will tell you another doctor from University of Rochester. His name is Dr. Quill.
Mhm.
Dr. Quill had a patient with cancer, and the way he treated her, he did not raise any feathers, and he gave her the medicine she needed, and she went peacefully with his dignity. He has written a book, Dr. Quill, and the case he wrote in New England Journal too. So that is a contrast between Quill and Kevorkian.
Kevorkian was a pioneer and he was breaking new ground. It was at a time when people were appalled at the idea of ending life. If Karen Ann Quinlan's life support, even though she was in a coma, was to be removed, then people were up in arms. I think because people are living such long lives nowadays and people are dealing with their aging parents and grandparents, I think people are getting more realistic expectations, and that comfort care, like your book describes, will be embraced, if not now, eventually for sure, Doctor.
Yes.
It's been a real pleasure speaking with you.
Thank
Dr. Theckadath Mathew has written 2 books, Jesus, the Odyssey of an Ordinary Man, that is historical fiction, but is based on fact. It is a 1.5 long exploration of the life of Jesus Christ. It has taken the doctor all across the world in search of the truth, and he has chronicled these facts and these anecdotes in a book, and it's a delightful book. What were you going to say, Doctor?
Thank you, and hope this interview will be seen by a lot of people.
Absolutely. And the other book is called Comfort Care, The Struggles of an Aging Cardiologist. They're both available on Amazon. Dr. Mathew, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Very good. You have a good day. Thank you.
You too. And I'm Logan Crawford, to the folks at home, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.
Thank you. Bye.